yes, as the title says, I'm going to do some thoughts, a little recapping of UFC 92, since I did order it. Yes, I did actually order it. I said I was going to, and I did. This was the first UFC in a long time that I was really kind of excited about watching. So I thought I'd come on here, just give some thoughts and recap a little bit. I'm not going to talk about any of the undercard stuff, even the stuff they showed on the pay-per-view, just because, you know, I don't want to ramble on for too long. And me recapping MMA isn't exactly my strong point, to be completely honest, particularly matches. So I'm not going to make you suffer through that too much. But I will talk about the stuff that was on the main card. So, and not this, and because this was pretty much the stuff that I ordered it for, and the stuff that I was paying more attention to. Really didn't pay too much attention to some of the stuff on the undercard, so that they were re-showing just for whatever reasons. But I might give some points on it. But anyways, we started with Al-Turk, I believe is his name, taking on Cheick Kongo. I would just like to say Cheick Kongo is the scariest man, I think, in the UFC. The guy is just looks scary. And definitely with this fight, I think reminded people, do not forget about him. He's kind of been the odd man out with the whole heavyweight thing going on with the two titles and the guys fighting for the titles. So he's kind of been the odd man out. Won this with some sick hammer fists and strikes. You know, they traded some low blows as well, and finally, Cheick finally, you know, did what he does, which is usually punch or kick somebody crazy. And that's what he did. So it was pretty, you know, impressive, I would say. And, you know, definitely said, don't forget about me, people. Don't forget about me, which was, you know, what it was. Next we got a match that I was kind of like, why are they putting this on now? Jackson versus Silva. I mean, to me, the crowd seemed like they were more into this than even the matches that were after it, which kind of says a lot, and pretty much, you know, what it was. But yeah, of course, this was the fight I was looking most forward to. This is the fight that I wanted to see. And Jackson pretty much made Silva look like an old man. You know, this has been something that was probably a little bit more apparent for those people that have seen the Dan Henderson Silva fight from, what was that, Pride 33, I believe. And he looked kind of old there, particularly with that knockout. This was the same type of scary knockout where Jackson hit him and he just fell. It looked scary. It looked like he was legit hurt. Silva just looked old, not shot by any stretch of the imagination, and not like he, you know, couldn't fight anymore, but just like he couldn't take a punch anymore, basically. And I would imagine a lot of that has to do with some of the wars and some of the stuff that some of the bouts he fought in Pride probably just are eventually going to take your toll. You can only fight for so long. You can only be in really wars and take a lot of punishment before eventually, you know, you can't do it anymore. I would say a lot of that is what happened to Krokop as well, that eventually all of that, you know, the punishment is eventually going to take its toll on you, and we saw that tonight, and this wasn't the last time we saw that happen, so there was that. We did see, and I said I wasn't going to talk about the undercard stuff too much, but I will talk about this because this was kind of neat. We saw Pat Barry versus Dan Evanson, and this match actually ended with a TKO due to a leg kick because it blew out the other guy's leg, and the other guy's knee. It was nasty, pretty brutal, and not something you see a lot. But man, Barry kicks hard to the legs. Man, those were like hard leg kicks, and pretty nasty stuff. But kind of interesting. Then we had the CB Dalloway match versus, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. Well, I'll try. Mike Manzino, I believe. Manzino, yeah. And this was pretty good. It looked like Dalloway was going to basically get choked out with a guillotine, and then, but it was countered. He slipped out of it. ended up getting on top and basically elbowing him, getting on top, punching him. And Zeno rolled onto his stomach, as guys do, and then did the gloves over the ears and was getting punched in the head, and then was shocked and amazed when the referee stopped it. Then don't do that. I don't understand why guys do that. At least buck up or do something to defend yourselves. That was the only bad part of this match, and because this was actually pretty good too. It was pretty exciting, particularly the counters, which was nice to see because I like stuff like that. Then we had another prelim fight, and you know, this is one thing I don't get about UFC, because they gave us all these prelim fights, which I know some people say, hey, we get to see more fights, la la la. I understand that, but I do think UFC could do a little better job with the hype packages, particularly when fights run short. I think they could do a little bit more of running the hype packages out and hyping the fights out a little bit more. One thing that I did not like about this is definitely one of the biggest UFC cards they have put on in a very long time, and they treated it just like another card. And I can understand doing that, but at the same time, it would have been nice to see a little more razzle-dazzle, a little bit more showmanship from UFC with this card. That's just my take. It's one of my big problems with UFC, for those people that have, you know, seen me talk about UFC for a while. Next we got another prelim fight. Matt Hamill versus Reese Andy, and this was pretty good, actually, in the fact that it was competitive and actually ended due to body shots. Not something that I usually see in MMA too much, but some really good body shots and stuff that really hurt, and was pretty groovy. And pretty much the body shots is what ended the match, so that was nice to see. Then we got maybe the match that most people, I would say, particularly the casual fans, were turning in to see, which was Nogueira versus Mir. And Frank Mir made fucking history, as he did what nobody, and I mean nobody, even guys that would just be considered, when they were in their prime, complete badasses in MMA, could not do. Frank Mir stopped Antonio Nogueira. Dear fucking God, Nogueira looked old in this match. He you know, I would say after about the first minute, you know, it looked like Frank Mir looked like the dominant fighter, I would say, after the first minute. He knocked Nogueira down twice in the first round, which, the first time he knocked him out, that's not a big deal, because we've all probably, if you've watched MMA for a long time, you've seen Nogueira get knocked down. And he got knocked down, and he even though he looked like he was in trouble for a little bit, he never really looked like he was in trouble. Not so much in the second knockdown. He knocked him down twice in the first round. He dropped him the second time. That time it looked bad. That time I was like, woo, Mir might stop him here. I mean, you're talking maybe a 10-8, maybe a 10-7 round for Mir in that first round, which to me means that Nogueira needed to come out big time in the second round, even though this was a 5-round fight. Came out, still did not look like he was on his game, looked like an old fighter taking on a young fighter, and got hit again. Nogueira went down, Mir jumped on top of him, started punching, and stopped it. He stopped it. He did what no one else has ever been able to do. Big freaking deal, in my opinion. This is a big deal. I don't think people will make a bigger deal out of this than what it is, but this is a big freaking deal. And so UFC's going to get the match that I'm sure they wanted to see, which was Mir versus Brock. I'm sure that's the match they truly wanted to get as the rematch. As I'm sure more casual fans would probably be more interested in to see that, which it'd probably do a pretty big buy rate, but a pretty big freaking deal. And my hat's off to Mr. Mir for doing something no one else has ever been able to do, and what no one ever thought anyone would be able to do, to be completely honest. And even if people thought that, you know, Mir wasn't at the top of his game or was past his prime, I don't think anyone ever thought that Nogueira would ever, you know, be stopped like that. You know, pretty big deal in my opinion. Mir probably will jump in the heavyweight rankings a lot when you consider that he has beaten Lesnar, he has beaten Couture. You know, I mean, pretty big deal. him and Lesnar, you know, had a little stare down type of thing, and Lesnar came. They did an interview before the match with Lesnar, and Lesnar basically said he wasn't champion yet. He wasn't champion until he beat whoever he was going to face, and he wanted Mir, of course, and that's who he's going to get. Will be very interesting to see. Hopefully, we don't have to wait too long for the fight. I'm sure when they do the press conference, which will probably, you know, those particulars will probably be aired probably while I'm doing this video. So hopefully we will find all of that out. So there we go. Very interesting stuff, very cool stuff. If you followed MMA for a long time, it was a pretty big freaking deal. And Mir looked good. I'm not gonna lie, Mir looked really good, and Nogueira did not look good at all. Even after the first round, all right, I'd say close to the end of the first round, before he got dropped the second time, I was sitting there saying, you know, Nogueira brings this out. I'm not too sure he's going to be able to beat Brock if he fights like this, because he's just he wasn't very aggressive, or he didn't seem aggressive. He didn't seem willing to just pull the trigger, so to speak. It just wasn't there. And hats off to Mir. You know, not just that he beat him, but that he stopped him, because that's a big freaking deal, folks. That is a big fucking deal. I am sorry. Then we got the main event, Forrest Griffin versus Rashad Evans, and very good fight, I thought. More of a stand-up fight than I thought we would get, particularly in the first 2 rounds. A lot of leg kicks, a lot of body kicks by Griffin. Evans looked to have a lot of problem with the reach and height advantage that Griffin had. And I was sitting there thinking, particularly in the second round, I was sitting there thinking to myself, why is, you know, Evans just didn't seem like he was even trying to take Griffin down. That changed in the 3rd round, and as soon as he got him on, as Griffin got a good kick, good punch in, and then got on top of him, started going crazy on him. Wasn't going to be able to stop him, so he kind of laid off, and they wrestled for a little bit, trading positions, and then finally Evans was able to get the upper hand and start punching him on the ground again with some ground and pound, and stopped him and won, and looked really good. And so Rashad Evans, your new light heavyweight champion, the you know, which, you know, that's the championship for UFC at the moment. Though you would imagine with Brock, Brock is bringing a bigger spotlight to the heavyweight, so maybe the heavyweight championships with Brock will bring a little bit more prestige to that. I know a lot of diehard MMA fans don't want to hear that, but Brock will at least bring some notoriety to that. Then after that, and this is the second time, you know, I've watched a UFC fight in a row that they have done this. We got another prelim fight after the main event. I am sorry, I don't buy this. This is bullshit. You should not put on because who cares? Who cares about another fight after the main event? You know, you should have ended the night with Rashad Evans winning the match. That's how you should have done this. You shouldn't have put on another fight. I know you had time. I understand, you know, you wanting to show everybody, but really, you know, I don't agree with it. I'm not going to cover the match because of that. I know people will say, oh, you're not giving these two guys the credit they deserve for fighting, blah, 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 blah. You know what? Rashad Evans deserves the credit. He should, you know, the end of the match, that should have been the end. If they were worried about that, then you know, this went 3 rounds. If they were worried about it, they could have put this match on before the main event and just ran the show long, because I'm sure the pay-per-view companies really don't care that UFC would run long, considering the fact that UFC brings them in a lot of money. Like I said, after the last UFC card, you know, this just shows their pacing problems, in my opinion, and something that they really need to fix, because it does. It takes away from something that was truly great in Rashad Evans. They really shouldn't have put on a fight after that. I know a lot of people won't agree with me. I'm fine with that. I'm just saying that, you know, it takes away from that, in my opinion. You know, and some people didn't think that should have been the main event anyways. I mean, even if you had put Mir versus Nogueira, who a lot of people thought that should have been the main event, you know, you would have ended, you know, basically you would have Frank Mir, who had just pulled off this incredible upset you know, wouldn't have been the last image of the paper, wouldn't have been the last image of the fight on the paper. You would have done another fight, and you know, your main event should be your main event. I'm sorry, that's just the way I look at it. I know that's really petty to a lot of people, but that's just kind of the way I look at it. But other than that, with the exception of the fact that I think they could have done a better job of making this seem like a bigger event than they did. Though they did try, you know, they did in the fact of they let the matches kind of sell for themselves. But very good card. A card that I wish, you know, this is the type of card I wish we could get more from UFC. I know a lot of people say that, you know, UFC just can't do that because of the amount of shows they put on. I disagree. I think they could put on 3 or 4 shows like this a year if they really wanted. But, you know, again, why should they when people, you know, aren't going to buy them or are going to buy them anyways? And I'm sure this card didn't do as much as, you know, some of the other cards, which will be one-fight cards. So, you know, what you gonna do, I guess. Anyways, that is that. That's my little review and recap and all of that. I'm sure that, you know, a lot of people might not enjoy it, but hey, I just thought I would come on here and do it. That's it. I'm out. Later, and have a good one.